Hey everyone, it's Jonathan, and welcome to the original finale of our mini-series on Disney's Alice in Wonderland. Today, Jenna and Katie are back to talk about the sequel to the 2010 Tim Burton remake, 2016's Alice Through the Looking Glass. This was the final Alice episode we did in 2022, but we have more coming. Next week, we'll be looking at one of the most recent Alice adaptations from Disney, Alice's Wonderland Bakery. And after that, we'll probably move on to Peter Pan, but we will be coming back for more Alice episodes later this year. There are still several Disney adaptations to go, all from television, so they're going to take me a little longer to get through before we can record the episodes. There's the 90s Disney Channel series Adventures in Wonderland, there's the ABC series Once Upon a Time in Wonderland, and at least a couple more obscure things that I do want to cover as well. Either way, for now we've got one more Alice film to go, so let's get on with Alice Through the Looking Glass with Jenna and Katie. Okay, so I liked this way better than the first one.
Yeah, same.
Like, a lot better. Like, I'd forgotten, like, I think I'd only seen this the one time in the theater, and I'd forgotten most of it, but I enjoyed this watch through way better than last week's watch through of the first one.
Yeah, I did too. It wasn't as much as a struggle for me.
I think it's partly because they just really did their own thing with it, and the other one, it was like they tried to do the book, but also not do the book at the same time. And this was just like, let's just do whatever we want, and everybody's going to have fun with it. And you could tell that everybody was having fun with what they were doing.
Yeah, it was better than the first one. It had more of a plot, so that was something.
That's interesting because a lot of people who actually do like this movie, like the Burton Alice, they don't like this movie, and apparently none of us are on that camp. So it's going to be a very biased review.
Yeah, well, like I said, I like the first one well enough. I can't explain why, I just do. But yeah, this one's way better.
I think the difference is for a lot of people, because it does have a different vibe, it has a different attitude, and if you like the first one, it's just not the same. Of course, that is what makes it stronger, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
But some people like the Burton phoning it in fairy tale thing, so it's okay, sorry, I think Burton's kind of phoning it in the first Alice. This one, he had no involvement beyond, having made the first one, and it was technically his Alice. That's it.
Yeah. Well, I'm wondering if the new director just really liked the story more than Burton did, because in a way, like, this is totally not Through the Looking Glass at all, but I thought the nods to the books were a little bit more clever and done better.
I thought they weren't as in your face and tribute-y,
Yeah,
because I feel like the first one, it's like, yes, there's a lot of references to the books, but it's like very in your face, like, if you know, you know.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas this one, I feel like that is, though, I will say the Looking Glass house scene, yeah, that is really, like, full of it. But
I was going to say that
quickly.
one stood out to me the most, like, going into that room when she first walked through the glass. That stood out to me as the most out of place scene in the movie and the most like the Burton film. Probably because it was trying to be the book that it came from, and it wasn't.
I think they were just kind of like, we kind of do the book, but not really. Get it out of the way.
Yeah.
But whereas the other tributes throughout the film are way more subtle.
Mm-hmm.
Like, for instance, when the Red Queen's being coronated, there's like a banner with the royal sigil on it, and it's the lion and the unicorn. It's like the actual Tanya illustration. Like, that's nice.
Mm-hmm.
It's just in the background. It's not being waved in your face.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's just more subtle.
I also like the fleshing out of the character of Time, because Time is mentioned as a person in the book, but it's just a mention, and it's more like wordplay than anything. But
yeah.
I mean, it's kind of ridiculous, but I kind of liked that they took that direction, especially if they're going to do a time travel story. Why not take that mention from the book and turn it into something bigger? I kind of liked that.
I might as well mention the reason why I don't mind this movie as much as the first. There's a lot of people, might be, well, you're a purist, you don't like plot. And it's like, no, that's not the case. I'm actually the kind of Alice adaptation person where I actually enjoy when people use Alice to tell new stories. Because I do understand it's not like the easiest story to adapt, but I think it makes really interesting material when you do different things with it. So the reason why I like it more is because I feel like this movie uses the books as a natural starting point. Like, I feel like the plot makes more sense of Alice. It's not this weird war story just with Alice in Wonderland forced in. True, it's more of a time travel story than an Alice story. I will admit that. But it just feels more natural to me, especially since time is mentioned in the books. I really like that. I feel like they try to retcon a lot of things from the first movie.
Yes, they definitely did.
Yeah. And, like explaining why the Red Queen has a big head, that kind of stuff. But it feels more like, I don't know, it just feels more considerate, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I can see that, yeah.
Yeah. I don't know, I like the vibe of it more. It doesn't look like dirty either. Wonderland actually looks really really nice.
Yeah. I think when I'm thinking back on these films, I think before last week, I think this is the movie that I'm thinking more of the aesthetic from, because even though I did like some of the initial scenes in the last one, I would say it's kind of like supposed to be beautiful decay. Like, I know you hated it, but when she first walks into Wonderland and everything's kind of, it's like part dreary, part colorful. I do like that. But then after that, everything just gets grayer and grayer and grayer. I think I was actually thinking more of this film than I was thinking of that film. I think my memories have kind of conflated the two. And this one has the aesthetic that I really like. It's very colorful, really creative, and it's way better than the first one. Even though I do like that initial scene, the melding of the two, for the most part, the movie just does get grayer and grosser looking. I mean, it's supposed to, because it's supposed to be like desolate, dystopia, whatever. But this one is way better in that regard.
It's like the first one had the gothic aesthetic, and this one's just like, you know what? The director's like, I didn't feel it.
Yeah, this feels like you're in a Wonderland.
And I could actually see why someone might consider staying in this one.
Yes.
Canonically, I suppose you could say it's Wonderland after it's healed from being war torn.
Yeah.
But let's be real, the director probably hated how it looked in the first one.
It's possible.
I'm just going to assume James, what's his name? James Bobbin. I'm just going to assume his mind, because I assume he's a logical person, because I like his film. So we agree on everything, obviously. And he's my buddy. And I think another thing I do like about this film is it feels more like it has to do with Alice herself, because the first one, it really felt like she was just there.
Yeah.
And you were being told these things about her, but she was very reactive. She wasn't really she was very passive.
Yeah, and part of that had to do with the fact that she thought she was in a dream and she just didn't really care about anything because of that. Whereas in this one,
like, I feel like in this one, it kind of sets it up more that she was grieving really bad in the first one. Yeah. It kind of retcons the first one.
Oh,
and I appreciate that.
I can see that.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot to do with her father.
Yeah, there's a lot to do about her father. And so, like, retroactively looking back, you'd be like, oh, she was depressed,
Yeah, depression was like a huge thing in this movie.
Yeah, but the thing that bothers me is just, I feel like that actually would have been a really good theme for the first one.
Yeah, it would have.
And they just didn't do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
And so I really like that. I really like the theme of grieving in this one because, TMI time, my own dad passed. So it's, I've been there, and, you go through a lot of coming to terms with the new reality. So I guess that they introduced this kind of theme in the sequel probably does hit a little close to home for me and makes me like it more because I can identify with it.
Mm.
But even if it didn't, I still think just giving Alice some more humanity,
Mm-hmm.
more presence, adds a lot to just being able to relate to her.
Mm-hmm.
And then I also feel like grief goes very well with Alice in Wonderland, even though, like, I am going to say the original books, at least Alice Adventures Wonderland, the first book, had nothing to do with grief. A lot of people feel like the second book has some themes of grieving because Carol had lost his father shortly before he had written that. And certainly you get a lot of like melancholy tones from the poems in that book. And I know one person I spoke to, I forget who, but he said that he thought perhaps they added the grief theme because of that theory. And possibly, I think it was really they're trying to retcon why she was so bland in the first one. But anyway, I guess what I'm trying to say is I feel like this movie is more, it's the journey in the movie is more symbolic of Alice's own journey
Mm-hmm.
internally. And I appreciate it.
Yeah. And I think it's also just better written too.
That's a bit sad, considering Linda Wolverton is the screenwriter for Beauty and the Beast.
Which one did she write? The first one?
Yeah, the animated Disney movie.
Well, I mean, these two, did she write the first one?
Oh, she wrote the first one. I don't know who
Okay.
wrote Through the Looking Glass. Hold on. Let's see who wrote it.
Oh, she wrote this one too.
Okay. Well, she did much better.
Okay.
I can see why people like her work. Now I'm wondering what the heck happened in the first one. The thing is, I've done no research for these films because I'm so not interested in doing that. But my gut feeling is Burton. Probably something happened there.
It could be. And I think they were just really leaning too hard into the chosen one war hero story.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's not bad. Like, I wouldn't say, I mean, I know
think
I'm in
it's
the
bad.
minority. I know I'm in the minority. I don't think it's bad. I don't think it's amazing or anything, but I think they leaned way too hard into the chosen one hero thing. And I don't think
Yeah.
Alice in Wonderland needs that. And I think that's where it suffered the most. But this one didn't have to do that. So
The thing that's weird for me, I feel like the first one is supposed to be about identity,
yeah.
like figuring out who you are and knowing who you are, but I feel like it doesn't do it right at all.
No,
Yeah.
especially not with the whole destiny predetermined thing.
But yeah, that's where it makes no sense. It's like you can't tell me this is about identity when they're literally telling her who she needs to be.
Mm-hmm.
So what's kind of interesting in terms of the sequel, I feel like the sequel is trying to set up that actually she was supposed to have gone back in time and done these things. So when the characters meet her in the first film, they keep saying the wrong Alice and stuff because she's not acting like the one they already met.
I don't really know if that's what they were meaning or not, but
I think
I
it
mean,
was.
it could be another retcon.
I think it's a retcon. I'm calling them out. At the very least, it seems to be implied Hatter's like, I'd know you anywhere. And that's why.
Yeah. Yeah.
I feel like it kind of retcons the first movie too, that he's the one who identifies her the most because he spent the most time with her.
Mm-hmm.
It's still stupid, don't get me wrong. It's I'm not going to sit here defending the movie's stupid choices. It's still dumb, but I mean, they tried.
Yeah.
Hey, you guys have any thoughts you want to bring up?
Well, what did you think of all the real world stuff? Because you have the film picking up some years later. Alice has been on a multi-year sea voyage.
I will say I appreciate that they actually included a scene where she's competent, because that's like my biggest complaint about the first one is that you get no inkling that she wants to be a businesswoman
Mm-hmm.
or a ship's captain or whatever. There's absolutely no inkling at all. I will say the only thing I don't like about it is I don't feel like I believe it with this actress.
Mm-hmm.
She just kind of seems confused the whole time to me. And I don't know, people could disagree, and that's fine. I think I would believe it more with another actress is what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
but they were kind of stuck with this casting choice from the first movie, and she was casted to be confused.
I suppose, yeah.
I don't know. I feel like I feel like the actress herself doesn't believe she's really doing it, but I don't know. That's just me. I give them a point for actually showing her being competent, because that was my biggest problem.
Mm-hmm. Well, I liked that they brought back pretty much everybody other than the people who are now dead. Like her mother, the Ascots. I guess I had completely forgotten that they were still in this movie. Like I said, I only seen this one time, and I completely forgot the Hamish subplot, even though it kind of, the whole thing kind of revolves around that. The real world story revolves around him. I forgot he was back, but I was glad to see that they got everybody back.
He's just kind of a forgettable character, to be honest.
He is. He is. He's a very dumb villain.
Yeah.
He's so
very
snivelly.
Very shallow. Like,
Yeah.
there's not a lot of motivation to him, which I guess is the point.
Yeah.
I don't know. But then it's like, oh yeah, and then her mom's like, oh yeah, I've like sold my house to them to kind of force you to give up traveling the world in your ship. Oh, that's okay.
I didn't like how easily that was glossed over in the end.
Yeah,
I felt like there should have been more.
Did they explain why she did it, or was it literally just because she didn't want to go adventuring anymore?
They didn't really explain it. I was kind of wondering if maybe giving her the benefit of the doubt, maybe she thought Alice was dead and that was her only way to get money. I don't know.
No, I don't think so. I think she did it. Well, for one thing, I do think she was probably preyed upon by Hamish a little bit.
Oh, probably.
Yeah. But I think it was meant to be, my daughter is supposed to be a lady of society. When she's back home, she needs to go get married and settle down.
Mm-hmm.
She shouldn't be on these trips. And then in the asylum, I do think the asylum part is really, really stupid. I will say that's a really big flaw of the movie. But the asylum part is supposed to redeem her mom, right? Like, she's like, oh, I don't want my daughter to be treated like a lunatic and be drugged.
Mm-hmm.
Run, Alice. You know, it's like, I don't know. I just kind of like, it still feels a little glossy over to me.
It does.
Yeah.
I thought there should have been more with that. And for some reason, like in my memory, the asylum scene lasted a lot longer than it did. I was thinking there was more to that, but it's literally she comes back home, wakes up, escapes, and then goes back to Wonderland.
Yeah.
I thought she was there for longer. She really wasn't. She was there for maybe a day, and she doesn't really even remember being there. She just wakes up there.
To be honest, like, I could kind of see why they think she's crazy and needs to be locked up.
Yeah. I mean, not that Hamish is to be commended or anything, but I can see why he would assume that she's crazy.
Yeah, like, he's being an a-hole before, being all women shouldn't be on ships, but literally she ended up in his parlor, going on the couch, talking about what they thought was the atmosphere. So, I probably would have sent her to the hospital too.
Yeah, I think in one regard, yes, she definitely probably, if she was crazy, she needed some help. However, I think he just was happy to have an excuse to brand her as crazy and get rid of her.
Oh, of course, yeah. Because, I think that's actually the point of it, because later he's trying to get her mom to finish the shares, which he couldn't get before because Alice was supposed to have that. But presumably, if she's mentally unfit, then her mom would be in charge of that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't like the asylum scene. I also think it feels very thrown in for no reason besides to be like a rip-off of American McGee or something.
Yeah.
And
I figured that they put it in because so many people's theories are that Alice in Wonderland is just her delusions. Like Alice was crazy, so that's like one of the theories. And I think that was just supposed to be like a nod to that.
Yeah, but I didn't like it. It felt very unnecessary.
I think it could have been done better. I didn't mind it, but it could have been done better.
I just think it wasn't necessary. I don't see any benefit it brought at all besides the whole female hysteria thing.
Yeah.
Sexism. So I didn't think it brought any benefit to the story at all. I would have rather focused more on her relationship with her mom and anything else.
It reminded me of Return to Oz.
Yeah, but Return to Oz does it well.
Yeah, but I mean, her being institutionalized for delusions, that's what reminded me of Return to Oz. I think Return to Oz did do it better, but it just reminded me of that. There was actually more than one thing in this movie that reminded me of Oz.
My thing also is Return to Oz. It's at the beginning. I guess technically it's at the end too, but it's not like in the freaking middle of the story.
Yeah, no, that's another thing that I completely forgot about. I didn't remember that she was in Wonderland for half the movie, then she comes back and then is institutionalized and then goes back to Wonderland. I'd completely forgotten that they'd put it into the middle.
It
I thought it
feels
was at the
so
beginning.
unnecessary.
Mm-hmm.
That is why I think that it feels thrown in, is because it just happens in the middle of the whole time travel thing.
I think if anything, if you're going to have any point at all when she goes back to the real world, I think it would make more sense that she somehow runs into her mother and they have some development. Now they try to do that in the asylum scene, but it's really forced and weak. It's definitely not enough for me to believe later that her mom's mind has really changed.
Yeah, no.
In a good development wise.
Yeah.
It just seems like she's wishy-washy now.
Yes, definitely.
I don't believe she's convinced. I believe she's just, well, I guess if my daughter really wants to. I believe my daughter now.
Yeah, there needed to be more with that, because she was obviously stewing for years about her daughter being away at sea. She didn't want her to be a sea captain, so she sold all her share of the company. And then in just like a 5-minute scene, she changes her mind.
Yeah, and it's like just a split second, when she goes run. And it's like, what changed her mind was like, if people think my daughter's crazy, she'll be injected with drugs. I didn't see this coming. It's like, just like, what? She might have an alternative motive for wanting her to be in here.
Yeah, with the way she had been acting when she came back in and saw Alice standing over the doctor that she had just knocked out with the syringe, I assumed that she was going to be like, oh no, she's really crazy. But instead she's like, run. I was like,
I feel like that's most normal people's reaction.
Yeah.
That's the thing. It doesn't feel natural.
No, it doesn't.
No.
I feel like most people would be like, oh God, now she's going to be in even more trouble.
Yes, I mean, that would have been my reaction to seeing her standing over the doctor with the doctor having a giant syringe stabbed into him. I would have been like, oh no, she is.
Yeah. Whereas this one is just like, oh, my mind is totally changed. Run, Alice, run.
Yeah.
Find the atmosphere. You can do it.
I wonder how she explains this later.
Because that's another thing. She has absolutely no idea what Alice is talking about.
No, because I'm sure that Alice never told her about Wonderland.
Yeah. But she keeps going on about how, oh, you sound like your dad, so maybe Mr. Kingsley would just go on about atmospheres under the couch. It's like, this is normal.
Well, they do mention that her dad, they said some old-timey phrase that meant her dad was crazy, but...
touched in the head.
Yeah. And they said the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. So maybe she just feels like, well, she's like her father, and her father was okay, so who knows?
I don't know. Like, I could get, the thing is, part of me would actually kind of like more of a plot line between her mother and Alice.
Yeah.
Her mother not understanding her and then eventually accepting her for who she is. But I just don't feel like that's what was delivered here.
No, not really.
Yeah.
The stuff in the real world was probably the weakest stuff in the movie.
Yeah, it really was. Like, eventually I was like, I don't care. And then at the end, you're like, oh, maybe they were going to set this all up so Alice stays in Underland. And maybe she brings her mom with her or something. Like, let's go Oz on this, Because in the Oz books, eventually Dorothy decides to just stay.
And her aunt and uncle moved to Oz with her.
Yeah, but literally... nothing is there for her in the real world as far as she knows. And she's like, all right, I gotta go back.
Mm-hmm. Well, especially because when she gets back, she resigns herself to giving up her ship. And her mother is the one who ultimately decides, nah, I'm not giving up Alice's ship. We'll keep it and we'll run you out of business.
Yeah.
Which I did like that line talking about she was going to run them out of business within a year.
Definitely Alice makes bolder decisions, so I could actually see that happening.
Yeah.
Though it is, I don't have a mind for business at all, but I mean, does it strike? Where do they get the money?
That's what I was wondering.
Yeah.
Like, did they have a savings account somewhere? They didn't seem like they were particularly rich.
Well, I mean, why would her mom put the house as leverage or whatever if they were rich? It doesn't.
I suppose she had the money from selling the shares of the business. Maybe that was a lot of money, enough to start another business, but who knows? I suppose that's probably what they were thinking of. We're not meant to
think about it.
No.
Also,
no.
Is it me? Yeah, is it me, or are they implying that Harcourt at the end is interested in Alice? It's like,
I kind of wondered about that.
Yeah, like a future romance.
Yeah, they didn't have too much development with him. He was just kind of in the background making amused faces for most of the movie.
Yeah. He's like, I like the cut of her jib. I'm going to business in there. Anyway, anything else about the real world? Oh, I have something. Why the heck did Lady Ascot have her baby at a ball? That was so stupid. That
she couldn't find happened. A babysitter.
Yeah, and then the governess takes her away. Like,
yeah, I didn't even think about that, but you're right. They would have had a nanny or something, especially because they're rich.
Yeah, it would have been very tacky.
Yeah.
If they'd actually done that.
Because that thing is screaming.
Yeah, she's just like holding it. Like, yes, the guests are fine with this. This is not a high class function. It's okay. It's like, in modern day, she'd be the lady who wouldn't take her screaming baby out of the movie theater.
She would. That's definitely what she'd be.
Yeah. You have no idea how hard it is to be a parent.
Wasn't the baby a reference to the one that turned into a pig?
Oh my word, you could be right. I didn't even think of that.
I was like, is that where they're going with that? But then it never goes anywhere. So it's like,
I wonder. I mean, not that the Duchess was even really in these movies to be referenced.
She wasn't even in this movie. There wasn't any pig babies in this movie. There were pigs in the first one.
There were pigs in the first one.
But not in this one. So I have no idea.
A warm pig belly for her feet.
So I don't know what was up with that, because I was like, are they trying to imply she's like the Duchess?
I wonder. It's an extremely subtle reference if it is, because I did not get that at all. But it makes sense.
I would assume it is a reference. I just don't understand why.
Yeah, no, I don't know why.
I don't see the point.
Other than the fact that they just wanted to reference it.
Yeah.
I mean, I will say, at least, if it's merely just a tribute, like a reference to be a reference, I mean, I guess good job for being subtle. Because that's what I didn't like about the first movie. It was in your face.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely subtle if that's what it is. Yeah. I kind of want to believe that it is a reference to that, because I like the scene more now. I didn't really think much of the scene at all.
It's just the Victorian fanatic in me is just like, ah.
Yeah, no, it does not make sense for the time.
Yeah. Well, a lot of things in this movie doesn't make sense. It's just kind of Hollywood for you.
No, yeah, there's nothing about this movie, mostly nothing, that's very historically accurate. So I don't generally pick apart that kind of stuff. But
like,
I'm
Alice
not like
comes in this ridiculous ensemble, which
is supposed to belong to the Dowager Empress of China or whatever she said it was. I'm not convinced that was an actual historically accurate Chinese dress.
It was not. I mean, I will say it's not completely out of place in terms of the English were very interested in the Orient. Yes. And actually, in reality, in the movie, everyone's like staring at her like, oh my God, what a crazy woman. But in actuality, they probably would have been really interested.
I was going to say, I thought that they should have been more fascinated instead of whispering about her and calling her a clown or whatever they were saying behind her back. I thought they would, to me, you would think that they would be fascinated by this world traveler coming back from having been in China for so long been gone for all these years, and suddenly she shows up wearing this fabulous costume. I would have thought that she would have garnered more interest.
We forget that eccentric women existed in the Victorian era.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, I guess the movie is trying to imply that most of them were put into asylums, which sometimes was the case.
Mm-hmm.
But there were eccentric women who would show up in similar outfits because of the interest in Orientalism. And just being like, ask me about my world travels. Ask me. You know? So when someone does ask Alice, she's like, the world? You want to know how the world is? Like, I think that's a pretty normal, polite topic of conversation, Alice. Like, what's your problem?
Mm-hmm.
But I think the outfit itself is just kind of nonsense. It's pretty nonsense.
Because I think I have a clip from the movie in my, like, I put together like an end credits thing. Actually, it was from a music video that I made years ago, and I took that, and I'd forgotten where in the movie that came from. And in my head, that was a dress that she'd gotten like in Wonderland, and that's why it was so crazy. And then she shows up at the ball, and I was like, wait, that was from the real world?
Yeah, it's nonsense. It would have made more sense in Wonderland.
Yeah, I mean, it fits the aesthetic. It looks like something that one of the Hatter's family would have worn, except they dressed a whole lot more normal than the Hatter did.
Yeah, they dressed very... I find the way that... I guess we could skip to the Hatter's family if you want. I don't know.
Yeah, that's fine. We didn't go in order in the last one. We don't have to go in order in this one.
Yeah, well, we might miss something. Who knows? But the Hatters, I thought it was really weird because in the first movie, when you see them on whatever the heck day it's called, because I hate the...
I don't remember any of the days, and I didn't write them down because they were ridiculous.
Yeah, in that one, they're wearing the kind of aesthetic he's wearing.
Yeah.
But in this movie, they're like, actually, just kidding. He's the crazy one, and all the rest of them are conservative.
Maybe his clothes are like party clothes. Maybe that was what they dressed as for parties, and he just wears that all the time.
Because I think when they finally come out of the ant farm, they are wearing pretty, obviously very degraded clothes, but it looks like colorful clothes than they wore in the flashbacks and the memories. I mean, but it's like, I don't know. It's just, I don't know how I feel about it.
It's one thing that I think it's fine. It doesn't make a ton of sense, but it's not something that I'm going to question too hard.
I feel like it doesn't make that much sense in Wonderland.
Yeah, no. I mean, everybody in Wonderland is usually more outlandish, and they're like not comparatively.
Yeah, but it's not horrible. It's okay.
Yeah. So, what did you think of Time himself, Sacha Baron Cohen?
He did great. I really enjoy that the movie sets him up to be like this villain.
Mm-hmm. He's foreshadowed as a villain in the real world, I believe. There was a line about Time being a thief and a...
Yeah. And well, I mean, you look at his domain, it's very final boss in a video game.
I didn't think of it that way, but you're right.
He's got these ridiculous clothes. And then you kind of see him in like a Grim Reaper kind of role, which, the Grim Reaper is also like really misaligned like that too. So I enjoy it. And then later you see the flip where it's like, well, actually, he's not the bad guy.
My question though is why was he dating the Red Queen? Like they were set up as a couple. Like what did he see in her?
Well, keep in mind, I think what they were trying to set it up was that he's obviously a very busy person. He has nobody there except for the machine people.
Wilkins and company.
Yeah. So it's probably when she started, because I like to think she had this planned out because she obviously doesn't really care about him. She's just there for the chronosphere. So I think she came to him, and it happened to be he was really vulnerable because he didn't have anybody in his life. Yeah,
that's probably true.
And she's going on like, how come nobody loves me? And it's like, he actually does, the poor man.
Yeah, and I also was kind of thinking like, after all she'd done, what would he see in her? But he doesn't actually. It's not like he's God. He's not all-knowing. Because when he ends the person's life, he talks like he doesn't know was happening. Like, he hoped they had a good life or whatever. So he's not actively seeing everything that's going on. So he maybe just didn't know all of
He's
her
not-
atrocities.
Yeah, and he didn't know what Alice looked like, so
Yeah.
He's not a god. He's I think of him more as like a timekeeper.
Yeah.
He's just a caretaker.
Yeah.
Anyway, I really, a little tangent, I really enjoy the clocks, the whole like pocket watch as a life thing, and then putting them away.
Mm-hmm.
And Alice holding her father's pocket watch as a symbolism of her holding on to her grief is really good.
Mhm.
I think a little obvious maybe, but I like it. I also kind of like that it sets up that Alice is an idiot. Well, because he literally says high top's not here yet, and she's so convinced the Hatter has to be wrong. She's not listening to that, right?
Yeah. I didn't even think of that, but yeah, because she doesn't even think of it until later when she suddenly remembers
she doesn't
that,
think
they're not actually there.
Well, she's also convinced Time is a villain, so she's like,
Yeah.
I can't ask him for information on the high tops, whether they're dead or not, because he's not going to help me.
Mm-hmm.
But she's also convinced they are dead, so she's like, why would I ask?
Yeah.
Well, at that point, I can't really blame her for thinking that he's a villain because she already had that in her head, and then she hears him with the Red Queen, who she knows is a villain. So, I mean, what other assumption could you make than, well, he's dating a villain, so he's a villain?
Yeah, I mean, it just shows Alice is kind of like a Gryffindor, right? She doesn't think with her head, she thinks with her feeling.
Yeah, I can see
you know
that.
I'm right. But I enjoy that it's set up that way. Like, heck, maybe even some people. I kind of wonder how many observant people the first time watching realized that he literally said "high top's not here yet," because I didn't.
I noticed it, but I didn't. It didn't register in my head as important. Because at that point, I had also forgotten what the Hatter's last name was. Because in my head, he's just the Mad Hatter, and I know it's like Terrence or Tarrant High Top, and they have very ridiculous names, and I'm not going to remember. I did not write down any of their names because they're not that in my head. Like they're the Dormouse, they're not Mally Umpkin or whatever her name is. they're just the names from the book. Yes, something like that. And so I just wrote them as that in my notes. And so I'd forgotten exactly what the Hatter's name was. So even though he said they were not there yet, I wasn't sure that that's who he was talking about. So I didn't think about it as being important, even though it should have been obvious. Yes, it was important.
Yeah. Well, it's said very casually, kind of like those. Yeah. Like a little detail that's not relevant to the plot, kind of way.
Mm-hmm. I think I was too focused on the fact that it was in alphabetical order, and I was thinking that was kind of weird. I mean, like if not that you should like think too deeply about things, but like if it's the afterlife, not that it is an afterlife, it's just kind of a record. Like, why is it in English alphabetical? It's like not something that you should think about. I got too caught up on the wrong details instead of the one that you should have been thinking about.
Well, I think at least for the English part, if you notice, it says Underlandians. He doesn't take care of other places.
No,
he only takes care of Underland.
The whole time thing is only to do with Underland. Like, the time only, because like you see the real world at the end when everything is like turning to rust or whatever that was. The mirror rusts, but the rust doesn't leave the mirror. It's only that world. And the time when she's traveling, she only time travels within Underland. She doesn't time travel within the real world because she goes into the mirror in the past and comes out at her normal time. In present day, yes. So everything to do with time is only within Underland. He has no control over anything else.
Which is interesting.
Yeah. I mean, it makes sense for what they're setting up here. You wouldn't want, like, if he was also like king of time in her dimension, that would be like far too much power.
Yeah, true. Actually becomes a villain, like follows her around everywhere.
It's the setup for the next sequel. Now there's a trilogy.
Oh no.
Time, now actually a villain.
They could take another work of Lewis Carroll and not follow any of that book, but just use the title.
Hunting of the Snark. But the Snark turns out to be Alice. You're welcome. Oh, about time. I really, 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 really like the idea of going through a grandfather clock. I just like it.
I don't know why. Like I said, I've only seen this once, so it did not register to me that the exact same thing happens in the new Nutcracker movie, which Katie and I just talked about. And when they went through the clock, I was like, wait a minute, that just happened in the movie we just talked about a couple weeks ago.
Really? You guys just saw Nutcracker Fantasy? Because I was thinking, like, I really like it when that happens in Nutcracker Fantasy too.
No, it's not like a bad thing. It's just I completely forgot about it, and I forgot that the same trope happens where you get to another world through a grandfather clock.
Yeah, it's weird. It's like kind of like in there in people's heads, but it's not really associated with anything.
Yeah, no, I don't know that it was even. Well, I mean, Nutcracker came later, so I don't know that anything was a reference to anything else. But I think it's just a coincidence.
No, it's
like
not a reference.
Two people having the same idea.
Yeah.
And it's not a bad idea. I like the idea of going into a clock.
I do too. Well, I think it's just a very childlike way of thinking.
Speaking of the clock, why was it all chained up?
Gotta keep time chained up. I don't know. There's probably some reason.
Maybe they said, I don't remember.
Because like it was all chained up and then she just went poof. And then the chains disappeared, and I'm like, that seems unsafe and unnecessary.
The chains of time.
It also doesn't make sense for like unless there's multiple entrances, because the Red Queen has obviously been there before. Like
I think there's probably multiple. I think there's multiple entrances.
Yeah, so the chains then really don't make sense if they were trying to keep him in or whatever.
I'm just not invited in this house.
I think it's more that they're trying to keep people out.
Yeah, I guess that's probably true. I don't know. I don't think they ever explained it well enough for me to remember, because I didn't write anything down about why it was chained up. I don't remember them saying.
Anyway, I choose to believe it's chains of time.
There we go.
Yeah.
My favorite part was that all his doors were shaped like his shoulder pads. I thought that was funny. Just perfectly sculpted for him. It was funny to me.
I might as well say I find Sasha's interpretation of him very endearing.
Yeah.
I liked the scene where the Hatter took his shoulder pads and said, "Look, time flies," and was making them flap. There was a lot of dumb time puns that I enjoyed.
Yeah.
I mean, there's so many idioms having to do with time, and I think they fit in most of them into this movie. Well, I said before that there was things in this movie that reminded me of Oz, and there's several that you see in the first scene with time. The one little robot looked like the Tin Man to me. I don't know if it was on purpose or not, but it looked like he had the same shape of the head.
He reminds me of TikTok.
There was a credit on IMDb that said TikTok, and I kind of was expecting some sort of an Oz reference, but I don't remember anyone actually saying that their name was TikTok. And it says TikTok and then the name of the actor uncredited. So I don't know if it was on purpose or not.
I don't know, probably one of the machine things. I don't know.
It could have been.
Doesn't the Red Queen call time TikTok?
Yes.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Also, Wilkins looks like TikTok.
That I kind of thought that too. Also, Wilkins is voiced by Matt Vogel, which I thought was interesting because he does a bunch of Muppets.
Oh, yeah, I recognize his name.
Yeah, he's the current voice of Kermit and Big Bird and several other, like Uncle Deadly and I think Floyd from the band. He does a bunch of the big ones, but I thought it was interesting that they got him on as a voice for a non-Muppet character. But then there's also, I don't know if there's anything in Oz like this, but the vegetable people seemed like something from Oz, not Wonderland.
Yeah, they feel more Oz than Wonderland.
Yeah.
I know when I was watching with the movie with my friend, he was like, "Is this a Alice thing?" I was like, "No." Like, yeah, I didn't think so.
Yeah, when I first saw the one, because the one is a woman, and from a distance I was like, is that one of the flower people? But then you got up close and was like, no, this person is made of vegetables. I was like, I don't remember anything that this could be referencing in the Alice books. And
There's
it felt
nothing.
more like an Oz character to me. Because like Oz has all the weird lands where all the people are different, like the China land. I think there was a candy land in one of them. But
Yeah.
it felt like there should be a vegetable land in Oz rather than in Wonderland.
Well, it's also not really. It's not explained why. Like, it's not explained why they're following the Red Queen.
No, I didn't really get that either. And I also didn't really know why the Red Queen was back. Like you have the one scene where you see the knave stabbed to death in the chair. So she obviously killed him to escape from him. But like how did
Mm.
she set up this other kingdom where she's now the ruler of the vegetable people and she lives in a shrub shaped like her own head?
Because honestly, when you get to that part, it reminds me a lot of American McGee, except I think American McGee is actually supposed to be made out of gore. So it
Oh.
makes me wonder, they were like, oh, well, we like this aesthetic, but it's too dark to use. How can we how
Also,
can
there
we
would
make it
probably
not
be some
dark?
copyright infringement there if they were taking American McGee's.
Well, I mean, they could have just took a lot of his ideas. Um,
Well, it does kind of like I said, I've never played the game, but a lot of it does remind me of the things that I have seen from the game. So
yeah.
who knows?
But anyway, so it's like, I think they went, you know what? Plants, like red plants, could look like similar to tissue and blood and stuff. And yeah, I guess so. And then also they get to use the thorns. But it doesn't make any sense. It's really stupid.
Yeah, it doesn't fit with the Wonderland vibe, I guess. But a
And
bunch of the stuff doesn't really. This is their own creation. This is not the Wonderland of the books anyway, so whatever.
they had to give her someone new because they had made it that the car people didn't want to follow her anyway.
Also, what was with the bugs? Like the shrub thing that she lived in was coated in bugs, like all these magical looking bugs. And she also had her ant farm, which like I didn't really get why she had the ant farm. Obviously
She
she needs
likes
it at the
tiny
end.
things.
Oh, that is that why she kept saying she liked tiny things?
Yeah.
That was weird. Like, because you didn't really get that in the first one's like, where did this obsession with tiny things come from?
I would say she probably has like she likes unusual sizes is probably more accurate.
I suppose, but she specifically was saying tiny things in this one. But
Yeah,
yeah,
she's
I guess so.
well in the first one it was about big things.
Okay. So maybe she's just one of those flighty people who goes from one obsession to the next. So she
Yeah,
liked
maybe.
tiny things when she was young, then she moved on to big things when her head got bigger, and now she's back to tiny things.
I think in general she just I think they're trying to set her up to be like unusual sizes.
Yeah. And unusual things because of the whole bug thing.
Mm,
Like she liked bugs when she was a child, and now she lives in a house full of glowing millipedes and things.
mm. Foreshadowing.
Something like that. Also, they just needed the ant farm for her to hide the Hatter's family in. So that was a good way to get that in there, I guess.
Yeah.
And those were skipping around. I liked at the end that they had the White Queen give them an eat me cake to get big again.
Oh
Because
yeah.
I'd forgotten how that all went down, and I guess I assumed that they brought them to the White Queen so that she could make that same potion that she made for Alice to get her back to her right size.
Yeah, you don't really see much size differences in this one. Oh, actually, never mind. She goes through the glass and she's tiny for some reason. But why?
Oh, that's true. I didn't even think about that as far as because like when she falls out of the room, she's big again.
Yeah,
That didn't really make a ton of sense.
it didn't make a lot of sense. Honestly, you could take out that first scene in Wonderland
Yeah,
and
I
it wouldn't make a difference.
I think they only had that in there so that they could use the title through the looking glass.
Yeah, probably. Like, yes, I know some of you losers actually read this book. Here's some of the stuff for you. All right, let's get on to our story.
Let's get on to our completely made up story.
Yeah. So how about the queens, their backstory?
Ugh.
Uh,
I thought it was pretty silly, honestly, because like it's just like, oh, my what 11-year-old sister lied about something and now we're going to hold the grudge for like a million years.
Because I left the castle dramatically. It hurt my head so badly that
I
it swelled.
guess.
Yeah. I thought it was just she was supposed to have a big head in the first movie. Like, she's big-headed.
Yeah, I don't think it needed a backstory. However, I think that they wanted to go for the whole redeem the villain trope that Disney's been doing so much recently. So they were like, we got to give her a tragic backstory so that by the end she can be good again. And the Red Queen didn't need that. I would have said just leave her rusted body in the past and then she's gone forever.
And this one, they make it so that the White Queen needs to be redeemed early.
That's true. They kind of made her the villain in a way.
So it's weird because it's just bizarre though. Like, she still can't acknowledge it even as an adult.
Yeah.
Whereas a lot of people are like, when they do something bad to their sibling when they're kids, and then they grow up, and the sibling's like, "Do you remember the time?" Oh yeah, yeah. I'm sorry. That was really not great of me. But she's just like, no.
She does by the end though, and I think that's. I mean, they wanted her to like apologize, and that's how the whole redemption thing comes about, because the Red Queen's like, that's all I ever wanted to hear, and now she's good again.
But it's so weird. Like,
I know, the whole thing is weird.
She's an adult. Why does she even like not want to? Why does she even want to deny it still?
Well, I'm not gonna like say that that's not weird, but like there are people in real life who are like that, who hold on to, who don't want to admit their childhood wrongdoings, and there are other people who hold on to grudges for the stupidest things. So, for as much as this whole storyline was weird, that's not what I was focused on, because I know there are people who would do similar things in real life.
And that's true. It's a fine line, but I do think the ridiculousness made it more Wonderlandian to me. Because it's just this silly jam tart, and literally a whole war happened and people died.
I think if it had just been the tart, I would have been completely fine with it. But the fact that they went the extra step to have her run out of the castle, crack her head on the fountain thing, or whatever that was, the thing with the roses, and then have her head grow, that's where it kind of went into ridiculous, because the tarts weren't the thing that I was thinking was dumb, because the tarts was an obvious reference to the first book with her, who stole the tarts and everything. So that was fine, and I didn't mind, because that is ridiculous. It's very Wonderlandian to be ridiculous about tarts being stolen, but I don't think that they needed the tragic backstory of her having a head injury and having her head swell up. That's what made it get into ridiculous in a not good way.
I didn't mind too much, to be honest. Now we're opposites.
That's fine.
I'm just like, it's fine, and you're like, it doesn't make any sense. It's overdoing it. I'm like, it's fine.
I think it's just, for me, it's the fact that, like, I've said for years, like, I like a good villain redemption story, but now it's like they do it all the time, and I'm over it. I used to love when they'd have a great villain turn good, but now it's like they do that all the time, and they have villains turn good for the most minuscule of reasons, and this is one of the most egregious, because literally she just needed her sister to apologize, and now decades of murder are forgiven. Like, she was a ruthless tyrant who beheaded a literal moat full of people. Like, you have the whole scene, there's like how many heads floating in that thing? She's killed all those people, and now it's fine. Her sister apologized.
And her dad was completely right. She couldn't run a kingdom.
No, that's true. Her dad, he didn't foresee that, I'm sure, but he knew that she was unstable.
Yeah, you're still upset over this one thing.
And really, even though the whole thing is forgiven now, I bet if they did come back and make a third sequel, they'd have her revert to her old tyrannical ways.
Oh, I'm sure.
Because we'd need a good villain, and where else are you going to get a good villain than have her be evil? I can't believe that not that they'll make another one, but I couldn't believe that she's good now. Like, even though they've made nice.
I could see, what's her name, Miranda? whatever. White Queen.
That one I did write down. Let me look. I think it was Marana. I forget. I just called them the White Queen
White
and the
Queen.
Red Queen.
The White Queen, I will say, because I feel like there are a lot of people who just want to love their family so much they forgive everything.
Yeah.
So, like, I could believe that.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
She seems
definitely.
wispy and weak enough to do that.
That's very true. They didn't really have her be. They didn't spend enough time on it to get the sense that all is forgiven. But I could see her specifically wanting her sister back and being remorseful about the part she played in that to forgive her in that moment.
And I know there are definitely people who are like, I did this wrong thing, and that excuses everything they did.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, it doesn't.
Yeah.
They didn't have to do that.
Yeah. No, I think that's
She
probably
literally
what's going
killed
on there.
people.
Yeah. And not just the beheaded people. Like that, you have that whole scene of her sending the Jabberwocky in to fry that entire party.
Yeah,
And also keeping the Hatter's family locked up for years upon years.
She's like, I like tiny things. Like, that makes it funny. I kept these people imprisoned. Even though really it wasn't their fault. I was wearing a hairstyle that was not conducive to wearing this tiara.
Yeah.
No, that also was ridiculous. She must have had a ton of hairspray in because he tried to press that thing into her hair and her hair did not budge and the crown just broke. So like she had industrial strength hairspray in that thing. I was thinking he should just put the crown on top of one of the little heart hump things.
Yeah, I would have done that. Hair's not going down, just tilt it.
Or like make a tiara, just stick it into the hair.
Yeah, that would be a good idea too.
So why is she getting crowned and her sister already has a tiara?
I think it was supposed to be two different things because they said it was her sister's coming of age, and then the crown was like symbolizing that she was gonna be the next queen. The whole political thing does not make sense. Like they're making this up as they go, but I think that's what they were going for. Like it was like a double ceremony for two different things.
May I imagine being the audience at that? Just like, oh, awkward.
I think the audience probably was happy about it because they didn't seem to like her very much.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. Like, even if that jam tart thing never happened and the White Queen admitted that she shouldn't have done that, the White Queen would still be an awful person.
I think the way they set it up, they're trying to say that she would not have been an awful person. Like, if she had never gone out and hit her head, she would never have had that traumatic brain injury. Because I think they're saying this brain injury is what made her the awful person that she is.
Kind of like a disability, I guess.
Yeah, something like that.
I don't know. It's to be honest, I don't think they should have bothered.
No, it's
kind of like,
just another thing in the backstory that they didn't need to add.
Yeah.
I'm kind of like, I don't really care. It doesn't bother me too much, but also they didn't really need to do it.
No.
Something funny about the whole time traveling thing is I guess every Underland character, they're like all the same age.
I did think that too, because she goes back to that one time and they're all like kid versions of themselves.
Hatter was a cute kid, though.
Oh, yeah.
All the kids were cute.
I liked the Cheshire Kitten.
Cheshire Kitty.
Exactly. I was like, why is this not the Mad Hatter we got?
It reminded me of, which one is it? Like 1910 with the little kids. Do you know which one I'm talking about, Jenna? There's the one old silent movie where like everybody's played by little kids, and the tea party is one of my favorite tea parties because you have the little kids, like the Mad Hatter is a little boy, and like he's like shoving the dormouse into the giant teapot. I loved that scene. That was not a reference to that. It's just the kid Hatter reminded me of that.
Yeah, it reminded me of Muppet Babies. You're welcome. Just random baby sequence.
Don't give Disney ideas. They'll make a spin-off.
Oh, no.
Oh, that'd be so terrible.
This is very random, but I liked when the queen seems like she's just killed his family, and she jumps on the Jabberwocky's leg and kisses it. It was very random. I liked how weird that was.
I like that the family's taken away. She holds up her arm, holding up the half-broken crown and being like, revenge to nobody because they've been taken away. She doesn't know Alice is there.
She's just giggling evilly to herself.
Yeah. But by love, I mean I hate it. It's stupid. But I guess it would be in character for her. She is kind of stupid.
Yeah, no, I didn't question it. It just seemed like something weird that she would do, giggling to herself and saying, revenge. Another random observation was that apparently the Hatter does not wear makeup. That's his actual skin, because he turns white when he's sick and dying. And then when she comes back and she says she believes him, all his makeup, or apparently not makeup, just starts flowing back in. His hair turns orange again. All of his colors are apparently his natural skin and hair tones.
Yeah, that actually bothered my friend that they don't explain why that is, but they explain away her head, which makes an interesting question. Like, what's the difference? So for the Red Queen, it's not natural. Like, something happened for her to get the big head.
Mm-hmm.
But he just, like, was born with big eyes and developed the skin and the hair.
Well, we need a third movie to have a tragic backstory for him where he was stricken with some sort of pox, and it was a magical Wonderland pox, and it turned his skin rainbow colors and gave him peppermint eyelids.
Oh, there was a scene where his weird peppermint eyelids was falling off.
Oh, was there?
Yeah. I was like
accident or
yeah, I'm assuming. It was like it was slipping down. You could see the glue underneath.
Oh yeah, that sounds like an error.
Yeah, I didn't.
You got really close to his face, and I'm just like, oh no.
I didn't notice.
Like, did no one notice? Or did they notice? And they're just like, well, we just want to wrap it up. We're almost finished. This is the last shot.
Who knows?
But I do wonder if it's probably not on purpose, but it's kind of a commentary between like when something's natural and when it's unnatural, I guess.
I don't think there's any consistency for these movies. I don't think they gave it enough thought.
I doubt they gave it a lot of thought, but it sets itself up for that kind of thought process.
Yeah.
Like, it's okay that the Red Queen, ended up being bad because something happened to her.
She had a brain injury, so it's fine.
Yeah.
We'll forgive all the murders.
Yeah. Whereas Hatter, you're different, but it's who you are. You were born this way. So it's okay, and we're proud of you.
Or did he contract Wonderpox, and now he's that way?
Now we need to explain
it. Another random observation. I don't know why, but I really liked the scene where she's in her shrub castle thing and she's looking at her ant farm, and this is before you know that his family's in there, and she just shakes it and says earthquake and laughs to herself.
Yeah, she's a bit of a psychopath.
Yes.
It must have been absolutely terrible for them.
I wonder how many earthquakes they had to endure. Did she
Probably
just come by every day and shake that thing? Also, what did they eat in there? There's only sand in there. Did she break off pieces of her vegetable cronies and feed them those?
I mean, she literally would break off pieces of them, so maybe.
Oh, so since I latch on to characters randomly, the king was my favorite, but that could have just because it was Richard Armitage.
Literally the king that was barely in it.
Yeah.
The king made zero impression on me. I don't think I even wrote any notes on him other than to write that he gave the crown to the White Queen instead.
He was glorious.
Okay.
He just delivered every line with such sincerity.
I'm glad he has a fan. If he listens to this, he'll have his little heart warmed.
Katie gets me. She got what I was going for.
It wasn't just a paycheck. I really put my soul into this movie.
They cut out all my best scenes. In a way, I think this movie just ties up the loose ends more nicely, that I don't really have anything to pick at.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the petrification of time is it's very cliche of a time travel plot, kind of like you ruin time, you can't let anybody see past you. I don't know, that's kind of boring.
Yeah.
But they wanted a climax.
Well, it's one of those things where it's like, who made these rules anyway? Like, why does all this, like, why does everything rest? Or whatever was happening to them? Why do they all break down, and why does everything freeze? Just because the Red Queen saw her child self. That didn't really make a whole lot of sense. But
well, it's like a paradox thing.
Yeah, it's one of those things where it's like, yeah, it doesn't make sense, but I probably shouldn't think too hard about it because it's all a fantasy world anyway.
That is kind of the thing with this movie's plot. And it's the same thing for the first one, actually. You really can't think that hard about the plot.
Yeah.
Because it just kind of falls to pieces. Like, another thing is, like, okay, so wait, was Alice meant to have gone back in time the whole time? Because if you recall, the Hatter, Hare, and Dormouse waste time's time.
I liked that scene. I liked that they made a reference to that. Like, from the original book, like, it's always tea time. Like, having time freeze them in that time.
Yeah, but anyway, he puts them in a time loop until Alice does appear, presumably child Alice, I guess?
Yes. That's what I got from it.
Yeah, so it's kind of like, wait, so this was always meant to happen. Alice was always meant to steal the chronosphere.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they did, not that I like this about it, but they did set up in the first one with the Oraculum, as their history has all been predetermined. So I guess in that way it does make sense that everything has to happen the way it does.
Mm-hmm.
But that still doesn't make sense with, like, if everything has to happen the way it does, why is it bad that they went back in time and messed with time and then broke time and then everything rests and falls away? And it's another thing that it doesn't hold up if you think too hard about it.
Yeah, that's kind of what I mean. Like, you can't think too hard about it.
Yeah.
That's why I'm like, you can't think too much about how that time loop was already in place when Alice first came.
Mm-hmm.
You also can't really think about why they're like, oh, well, I invited her. I didn't say she'd come. Like, he hadn't met her yet at that point, right?
Well, he had met the adult Alice, but I don't remember him actually inviting her to a tea party when he met her as an adult. Because remember, they had that whole scene where she said that he would meet her when he's older and she's younger, and then he was confused by that.
Yeah.
I don't.
I mean, I guess he did say at some point, "Let's go drink tea," when she's talking madly. Yeah.
It could have been. Kind of making I was writing a bunch of notes at that point, so maybe I was typing through it and just.
Well, this is what I mean. Like, when you pick at the threads, it starts to fall apart.
Yes.
It's very confusing
to
really analyze what timeline everything is and what's happened before and who's met who.
Yeah, it's just one of those things where even in the things that I like, there are definitely problems. So it's whatever.
I guess the difference for me is both films are like tapestries. I don't like the image the first film makes. So I could pull threads. I don't care.
Mm-hmm.
This one, I'm like, it doesn't bother me. I like it. So it's like, I'm more willing not to pick at threads.
Yeah, that does help.
Yeah, but I know if I do, it falls apart.
Oh, definitely.
I'm not saying it's a good movie, and I'm not saying it's a good Alice. I'm saying
you sound like me with the first movie.
That's what I mean. We switched roles.
Except I feel mostly the same with this one. It's definitely not a good adaptation of Through the Looking Glass. It's not an adaptation of Through the Looking Glass at all, unless you want to count that very brief scene where she actually walks through. But other than
No, I
that, I
don't.
don't mind the movie that they've built. It has definite problems. It could be a lot better, but I still enjoy it for what it is.
Yeah. Of course, part of me is like, when I saw this in the theater, my expectations were rock bottom. Like, you couldn't get farther bottom. I was like, I'm gonna hate this. So, there's a big part of me that's still just kind of like, it's not as bad as I thought it'd be.
That definitely does help any movie. If you go in expecting the worst and you get a decent movie, it does seem a whole lot better than it should.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, in a way, I could be a little biased towards this movie, I suppose, because
Mhm.
I hated the first one so much. So, and in a way, maybe I'm still having a hard time looking at it objectively as a movie without comparing it to the first one and then therefore liking it. I don't know. I can't prove that I would have liked it as much if I hadn't seen the first one. If this was a standalone movie. But I
Yeah.
feel like I would have. Like, if this was the first movie, more of a symbolic journey of an internal process Alice is having, I feel like I would have liked it more.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, well, I guess we'll never know because the first one exists and you hated it. So
Yeah, this is the timeline where I hate Burton. It's determined by this one thing that I did. You guys are welcome. Yeah, I don't think I have anything else to say.
I guess my last thought is whenever the Mad Hatter said "my family" in his really high-pitched squeaky voice,
My
I,
family.
I was like, please stop.
I did think he was a little bit too childish at times. It's like, yeah, I know he's like supposed to be slightly mad, but he seemed like, I don't know.
I just don't like Johnny Depp, to be honest. I'm done with Johnny Depp. So I don't really care about the Hatter.
I don't know if I liked him more in this one or the first one. I like
I liked him more in this one, I'll say that.
Okay. I like the idea of where they're going with this character. He has waves. Like sometimes I like his performance better than others, I guess.
Mm.
But I do like how weird he is. Like that's one of the reasons why I like these versions because I do like how weird his version of the Mad Hatter is.
Mm. I'm just gonna give the compliment that it's better than the first movie.
Okay. That's fine. This is probably as good a place as any to end. I think we've probably exhausted all of our very random opinions on this movie.
Well, it was certainly a discussion.
Yes. And hopefully a fun one. Hopefully people will be interested in what we have to say and not be offended at our opinions. I don't know if anybody's like that dedicated of a fan of this movie that they would be upset. Not that we bashed it like
I think it'd be more fans of the first movie, but I don't know who would watch.
Well, if they
watch
if
this.
they were a fan of the first movie and they listened to that podcast, they probably won't be back for this episode.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
Oh, okay, well, I guess until next time, do you guys want to let people know where they can find you if they want more? Jenna?
Yes, I am Phantomwise on YouTube and love-gift of a fairy tale on YouTube as well. And that's really all I'm active on.
Okay. And Katie?
And I'm Katie Draws Things on Twitter and Instagram. And I draw things sometimes.
Okay. I will have links to all of your various locations.
Awesome. Thank you.
Well, until next time.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening to the Disney Movie Marathon. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to subscribe and follow my co-hosts as well. My link tree and all of our links will be in the description below. If you want more of my content, all my podcasts are available on YouTube as well as most podcast platforms. If you enjoyed this show, check out one of the other podcasts or check out my Patreon for bonus and extended episodes you won't find anywhere else. We'll be back soon with another brand new episode, so thanks for listening and we'll see you next time.